Good morning, everybody. Steve here. La, 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 la. All right, we're starting off today, and this is going to be kind of interesting because we're going to talk about this here: DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And despite the definition, it is failing horribly everywhere, and it's going to continue to fail. And this usually I don't get into this, but this has gotten to the point of where it's hit something kind of near and dear to me, and it has reared its ugly head, and it's going to have a very adverse effect on a huge segment of our society. Now, to the point of where me retiring overseas is another benefit of running away from DEI. It's incredible. And so what we're going to talk about is DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And according to the definition, it's a term used to describe policies and programs that promote the participation and representation of different groups of people. That sounds kind of good. That's kind of sounds equitable, and there's a diversity, and you're including a bunch of different people groups. Can also encompass different races, genders, sexual orientations, religions, ages, abilities, disabilities, cultures, and so much more. It kind of reminds me of, I don't know, the when you buy a house and the housing, they can't discriminate you based on sex, age, race, your ability, disability, the culture, the whole nine yards. It's already been a thing, but this is being repackaged as something that we all need to do, and now companies are hiring DEI managers and representatives for their companies to be inclusive of all these people and to bring them into organizations, which is fine. I mean, if you hire somebody, it should probably be the person that has the qualifications to get hired. It shouldn't be based on your sex or sexual preference or what you do in the bedroom or your race or your culture. That just doesn't seem fair. It should be the best person for the job. Maybe it's because I'm older and that's the way I feel and how I was raised. But today I want to talk about something that's really, really crazy. And matter of fact, we're going to start off with the Daily Mail, and how this DEI has gotten to the point of where it has been forced upon universities, and it ends up that we're seeing test scores from universities go down. Students don't know, how to conjugate a verb. They don't know how to diagram a sentence, and it's remedial English 101 or remedial English 99. In other words, they don't even know high school English. Well, a bunch of universities adopted this, and unfortunately, it's been failing horribly to the point of where you should just get the best person for the job. So we're going to take a look here, and here it is. Let me kind of make this a little bit bigger. MIT becomes the first elite university to drop its controversial diversity statement for faculty applicants and admits, yeah, it don't work. They don't work. It doesn't work. They, them, him, her, zer don't work. Or, what is the thing that we're looking at here? The MIT president says DEI statements impinge on freedom of expression. Wow, I'm impressed. Anyway, MIT has dropped the controversial hiring practice. It requires prospective faculty to write a diversity statement as part of the application process. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that if you are going to be hired as a teacher, you should be able to teach. That's what you get hired to do. You should have some things in your resume that say that you got trained in the things that you were teaching, and so that's a thing. And you're able to teach a wide variety of people. It's whether it's history, English, math, science, whatever it is, basket weaving. You should be an expert within that field, a subject matter expert, and be able to pass those nuggets of information, or how to do these things, or how to think critically, or whatever it is, the process of doing whatever it is that you teach. passing on the information, involved in the communication process and getting feedback and the whole nine yards. And people can retain that information for future use. I don't know, that's just me. But anyway, having to write a diversity statement in the application process, that just doesn't work. Applicants are also required to outline their track record of working with diverse groups of people and share how they plan to advance DEI and inclusion within their role at the school. This is going crazy because instead of basing the hiring practice on somebody who's the most qualified person to teach that subject as a subject matter expert, now you're going to base a huge chunk of the hiring on some BS that somebody can write on saying, well, here it is that I've worked with these many diverse people and groups. And so, in other words, Chat GPT comes into play, and you could just BS your way and have a leg up over somebody. If you have the two exact same applicants with the exact same qualifications and somebody's DEI statement is better than the others, guess who gets hired? Yeah, the DEI person, which really could lie their ass off on, how it's a thing. Anyway, the president decided to remove the requirement because compelled diversity statements alleged impingement on freedom of expression and don't work, the university confirmed. The school is the first elite private university to backtrack the controversial application practice. The request for the statement on diversity will no longer be part of the applications for any faculty position at MIT because, again, what you're doing, the solution is dilution and the dilution is DEI. And unfortunately, when you get around hard scientists and education and processes, the things that have cut and dried things, adding in DEI it dilutes that and it minimizes the amount of information that you can give to somebody. That's what I think. So the president believes MIT can build an inclusive environment without requiring diversity statements. Yeah, imagine that. Yeah, can you teach students this information and then can they regurgitate it on an exam or test or quiz or, their thesis or whatever? Yeah, you don't need DEI. You don't need to be cognizant of, I need to make this diverse and I need to be equitable and I need to include, because what we found out over time is that unfortunately when DEI comes into play, standards are lowered and you get a bad product on the other end. And it goes way deeper than that. So anyway, around 25% of the faculty reported they were very extremely likely to self-censor. 41% of faculty agreed that the administration's stance on free speech was not clear. And again, forcing people to say things about diversity, equity, and inclusion outside of a teaching realm as trying to justify why you should be hired there doesn't really make sense because, again, you're diluting. It's a solution that's looking for a problem. And unfortunately, it's with school and science and things like that. You teach these things, the kids remember them, and they regurgitate them. And that's, if you can do that in an engaging manner in which the students are involved, personally involved, and so on and so forth, how you teach, that's more important than, saying, writing a statement, I was... diversity is important in my classes because, when I worked at this place, there was blacks and whites and Hispanics and Asians and Peruvians and all kinds of different cultures that I taught. And it's like, so it's still the information being passed. Equity. Equity is real weird because it's not everybody's going to be equal. That's the thing. Everybody has... at least in the United States, everybody has the opportunity to start off and to build a business or build a life here in the United States. Actually, I'm in Korea. But you get the point. For life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, everybody gets a chance to do that. But when you start getting into equity, that means that you're raising somebody up above somebody else to keep them on the same level. And it's like, well, if somebody's down here and then now the standards are here, you're going to bring these people up, which is great. But then the problem is if you have people up here, you're going to bring them down here and you're taking away. And that's not how the world works. Everybody has the same starting line. Some people are going to go faster. Some people are going to go slower. Some people are going to be, you're going to have people in school that just, they just kind of flip through the pages of the book and they memorize everything and they ace the class. Other people are going to have to spend hours and countless hours studying to get the information to get a passing grade, okay? So trying to say, okay, in this equity thing, especially when we start getting into schools and start getting into things like businesses, now the standards are malleable and they're different for different people. But usually what we end up seeing is with people that are lower on the equity scale, as they say, we're going to raise those people up, and the only way to do that is to lower the standards to their level. And that has an adverse effect in business, commerce, education, and the final product that comes out the door, whether it's students that are graduating from Ivy League schools, or it's a small mom and pop business, or it's a big corporation that deals with a ton of people. So yeah, this ended up, the DEI, it's just crazy. Let's see what else. I mean, you can read this. These will be included. But it ends up that, so for example, here, we're not going to deal with that. We're going to close that. In the New York Post, Boeing ends up, all these pop-ups, Boeing prioritizing diversity inclusion over flyer safety, Elon Musk says in a near catastrophic Alaska Airlines mishap. Now, we've read about this or you heard about this. If you haven't, you've been living under a rock. And Elon Musk has ripped Boeing over a filing that appeared to show the aeronautical giant 2 years ago began using diversity, equity, inclusion goals as incentives for executive compensation after previously focusing on safety and quality controls. Again, what we're doing is we're raising people up by lowering the standards, and that's going to have, if you have a low caliber person with low caliber qualifications and you lower the standards, the output of that person is going to be low quality. And that low quality is going to have a ripple down effect into that organization or business. And yeah, it's so no longer about safety and quality controls. Now, it's no longer about having the best maintenance team. It's no longer about having highly qualified technicians and so on and so forth, or pilots. It's about being diverse in your hiring practices. And you got to lower the standards. So again, the thing that your business is focused around will have lower standards and lower output, lower quality. It suffered, in this aircraft, it suffered a fuselage panel blowout over the weekend, reacting to a screenshot by a proxy statement from Boeing filed with the Security and Exchange Commission. The aircraft manufacturer changed its incentive plan for giving executives bonuses based on passenger safety, employee safety, and quality to rewarding them if they hit climate and DEI targets according to the filing. That is insane. Yeah. Do you want to fly in an airplane where they prioritize DEI hiring over your safety? This is actually happening. And unfortunately, that's what we end up seeing here. And so it goes through and shows all this stuff. But yeah, that's what you're going to end up having. When you think that the solution, and this is kind of a science thing, I've already said it once, the solution is dilution. You're going to dilute that final product, and it's going to degrade it to a point of where the output is not going to be as high quality as it used to be with DEI, because your focus is now on bringing people with lower standards or lower qualifications into an organization, and you think that their output is going to be superior just as it was before you had DEI. Yeah, it's not a thing. Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. Our goal was to achieve diverse interview slates for at least 90% of our manager and executive openings. No wonder they're going to have problems. If you take 90% of the manager and executive openings and it's going to be DEI stuff instead of having the best qualified person to carry on the high standards of quality and safety and so on and so forth. Yeah. With 92 interview slates being diverse, resulting in 47% diverse hirings. That's going to have an adverse effect on your final product when it goes out the door. For 2023, raised the bar and expect at least 92.5% of these interview slates will be diverse. Yeah, I'm flying to Hawaii pretty soon, and I'm going to make sure I'm nowhere near that emergency door or close to the side if it's a Boeing plane. It's absolutely crazy. Musk doubled down on his stance, adding in a post, people will die to DEI. And and which an emergency landing where a chunk of the plane blew off at 16,000 feet, leaving a gaping hole in the plane. In a stroke of luck, no passenger was in seat 26A on the flight and was directly next to the panel that blew out. The United Airlines also found loose bolts and other installation issues on some of its Boeing 737 MAX 9 jets that were inspected following the Alaska Airlines flight. And they are faced with an influx of scrutiny after its aircraft malfunctioned mid-flight. Yeah, it's going to be absolutely crazy because when you take your eye off the ball goes where it wants and it ends up crashing and burning and bodies and screaming, and it doesn't end up good at all. We continue on. Boeing Insider explains how DEI has undermined company culture and degraded performance. What are the odds? If it degrades performance in companies and businesses and financial institutions and, even into the realm of the medical world, which we're going to talk about here, this is really a good one. But yeah, it's in these insiders, if you read this, it is absolutely crazy. The headquarters Arlington is empty. Nobody lives there. An empty executive suite. Boeing is just a symptom of a bigger problem, the failure of our elites. The purpose of the company is now broad stakeholder value, including DEI and ESG. I'm not sure what ESG is. It's some other buzzword. That doesn't have to do with quality control, superior products, high standards, safety. I don't know. This was embraced as a means to power, which further separated the workforce from the company. It is ripping our society apart. Boeing is the most visible example because of every problem, like they say, a bolt that falls off gets amplified. I interviewed a longtime Boeing insider who explained how exactly DEI has undermined the company culture. DEI is a drop in the bucket and the whole bucket changes, which is absolutely true. Being in the military and spending time in the military, working for the state of Colorado, and all of these things that I've worked, if there is a change in leadership or there is change in policy and it degrades the standards and the quality of the output of what you're doing, whether it's people, product, or processes, then what ends up happening is you have a diluted or low quality product, or the thing that gets out the door is a lower quality than it was before. And unfortunately, what we're finding is that DEI companies are spending millions and billions of dollars. Governments are spending millions and billions of dollars for DEI projects and managers and curriculum and training and this and that. And it's getting so far to the point where they're focused on so much on DEI that they're forgetting the important things of the business or the process or the product. Here it says, let me see if we can blow this up. Inside status game rules every boardroom in the country. DEI narrative is a very real thing, and at Boeing just got tied to the status game. It is the thing you embrace if you want to get ahead. It became a means to power. Imagine that. DEI is a drop in the bucket and the whole bucket changes. This is anti-excellence because it is ill-defined. It has become part of the culture and was tied to compensation. Again, if your product is carrying people from one place to another safely, with minimal breakdowns, that should be where the excellence, that should be the excellence that you're working toward. But when you take away from that, and now the focus is on DEI and there's compensation and there's money involved, you're going to be shooting for that instead of the high standards and getting people places safely and not having planes fall apart in the sky. Every HR email is inclusion makes us better. Does it? Apparently not, because it's having a very adverse effect in the majority of companies and governments that take this on. This type of politicalization of HR is the real problem in all companies. If you look at the bumper stickers at the factories at Renton or Everett, it's a lot of conservative people who like building things. Conservative people do not like politics at work. And it's just not conservative people. There's people that like putting things together to make them work. And if you want them to work in a high quality fashion, you have to hire high quality people. And when you take away from hiring that standard of people and it's replaced with saying, okay, well, now we're going to hire X amount of these people so that we're inclusive, the magic rainbow word of the day, and have a diverse, workforce, obviously to get some of those people because they couldn't get hired on before with their current resume, now you have to lower the standards to be inclusive and diverse, and it's not really equitable, it's just downright dangerous. Anyway, he says, at Google, they're making large profit margin pursuing very progressive hiring policies because they are paying 30 to 40% more than the competition in salary. They are able to keep the top 5% of whatever racial group that they want. They can afford it, in a sense, to pay the DEI tax and still find top people. Unfortunately, when you have companies that are not Google, and as we see even with financial institutions and higher education, Ivy League schools like MIT, I mean, they're getting a ton of money. It is having an adverse effect, and it's negative. It's not producing good products or good people, and it's just dangerous. So that shows you that DEI is a dangerous thing. This can be catastrophic in lower margin or legacy companies, obviously. You're playing musical chairs, and if you do the same things that Google is doing, you're going to end up with the bottom 20% of the preferred population. And that's true of any organization or business that takes on this DEI. It is absolutely crazy. Now, remember how we talked about this is going to affect you. You might say, well, I don't fly, I take the bus, I drive, or I don't travel. Okay, that's fine, but DEI is actually getting to a place of where it's hitting closer to home in seeing your doctor and the medical professionals that you go see to get fixed when you're not well. It is very dangerous. A failed medical school, how racial preferences supposedly outlawed in California, and that was in 1996, if anybody remembers, have persisted at UCLA. Up to half of UCLA medical students now fail basic tests for medical competence. My daughter is a doctor, so we've had firsthand experience, or at least secondhand. She had the firsthand experience. We had secondhand experience of all the stuff that she has to pass and study and learn and rotations and presenting and this and that and residency. It's absolutely crazy. And unfortunately, DEI, this is the result of DEI. Now, this wonderful lady here, Jennifer Lucero, she is the DEI. It's just absolutely crazy. Let's see if we can make this a little bit bigger. Maybe a little bit bigger. Okay. It was considered one of the best medical schools in the world. The University of California, Los Angeles, David Geffen School of Medicine receives as many as 14,000 applications a year. Of those, it accepted just 173 students in the 2023 admission cycle, a record low acceptance rate of 1.3%. And then it talks about GPA, scored 88th in MCATs, and so on and so forth. Without those stellar stats, some doctors at the school say students can struggle to keep pace with the demanding curriculum. Being a doctor and going through medical school is an insane amount of information. My daughter told us that a professor in medical school, one of the higher ups in the medical school she attended, said, think of the works of Shakespeare. And his vocabulary was like 250,000 words. And then you talk about all the information that you need in medical schools, learning all the processes of the body, all the different parts, and is a ton. There's millions and millions. And this professor ended up saying, we're asking you to learn this information that will far surpass William Shakespeare and his vocabulary, and we're hoping that you just retain 10 or 20% of it, and which is more than what Shakespeare. So it is a massive amount of information, and especially when we're talking about doctors, regardless of what specialty they go into, there's a huge amount of information, and we're talking about people's lives and treating children, men, women, young, old, the whole nine yards. Anyway, yeah. So when it came to the time for admissions, the committee to consider one such student, a black applicant with grades and test score far below the UCLA average, some members of the committee felt that this particular candidate, based on the available evidence, was not a best fit for this top-tier medical school, according to two people present for the committee's meetings. It wasn't received well. When an admission officer voiced concern about the candidate, the two people said the dean of admissions, Jennifer Lucero, exploded in anger because she's all about DEI. Did you not know African American women are dying at a higher rate than anybody else? And the admission officer, these people said, the candidate scores shouldn't matter, she continued, because we need people like this in medical school. This, if you're wondering what this is, basically there was a study done that showed that African Americans get lower quality care, but they get better care when they have a doctor that is of their own race. So that's kind of the mentality, is like, well, we need more black doctors to treat black people because they don't get representation and they don't get good quality care. Instead of teaching everybody how to give unbiased care and fulfill their Hippocratic oath to everybody, regardless of race, creed, sexual orientation, and so on and so forth, ageism, the whole 9 yards. Let's lower the standards. So anyway, the Supreme Court's landmark affirmative action ban last year in public schools was barred by state law from considering race in admissions. Now, this was back in 1996. But what they ended up doing, this chick, Jennifer Lucero, championed the cause of DEI, and I wondered, the official added, if this applicant had been a white male or an Asian female for that matter, we would have had that much discussion. Since Lucero took over the medical school admissions in 2020, several of her colleagues asked the same questions. So basically, bringing into this medical school, one of the top medical schools in the world, race admissions have turned USA into a failed medical school, said one former member of the admissions staff. We want racial diversity so badly we're willing to cut corners to get it. And again, this goes back to the thing of, if your end product, process, or person that you're trying to get out the door is a highly qualified and educated and experienced person, that should be your goal. You should be able to teach that information to everybody, so that way you don't need DEI, because it's already implemented within that educational process. So regardless of your race, your color, your creed, and all that stuff, if you present and teach that information of how to diagnose and how to identify different body parts and, arteries, veins, and nerves, and the whole 9 yards in a medical setting, and be able to give possible options for treatment, that's what you should be doing. But when you concentrate on getting diversity into the medical school, you're going to have to lower the bar. And that bar is going to have a significant impact, and it's a negative impact on these people being doctors and interacting, so you're going to get lower quality care. It continues on, and it is amazing. The school has consequently taken a hit in rankings and seen a sharp rise in the number of students failing basic standardized tests, raising concerns about their clinical competence. This is the huge part. I have students on their rotation who don't know anything. A member of the admissions committee told the Free Beacon, people get in and they struggle. It is almost an unheard of for admission officials to go public, even anonymously, to provide a window into the deliberations of bringing people into medical school. and accuse their colleagues of breaking the law and lowering standards. They've agreed to come forward anyway because the results of Lucero's push for diversity have been so alarming. And it goes on to say that normally I wouldn't talk to a reporter, said a UCLA faculty member, but there's no way to stop this without embarrassing the medical school. But again, the final product, you're putting out people that are going to be having the lives of people in their hands. And you want them to be good doctors to treat people so they can live and survive and all of that stuff. It's kind of a doctor thing, the Hippocratic Oath. But when you focus on something other than that, you're putting more time and energy in that activity than teaching people body parts, processes, all the doctor stuff. Within 3 years of Lucero's hiring in 2020, UCLA dropped from 6th place to 18th place in the U.S. News World Report's ranking for medical research. Yeah, they do research, and there's rankings for those. And so this is just another metric showing that it's not going well when you try to force DEI into medical schools. It's just... and in some of the cohorts, she admitted more than 50% of students fail standardized tests on emergency medicine, family medicine, internal medicine, and pediatrics. 50%, half. I don't know about you, but if you lower the standards, and for some reason these people get through because they continue to lower the standards and then thus have a high graduation rate, and then they can claim both, well, look how many people graduated and look how diverse our doctors are. We do this inclusion thing, but the end result in reality, they lowered the standards, so now you have lower quality doctors giving care to people. It's those tests, known as shelf exams, which are typically taken at the end of each clinical rotation, measure basic medical knowledge and play a pivotal role in residency applications. And they do. And those tests are killer. Only 5% of students fail the test nationally. 5%. Out of all the medical schools in the United States, only 5% of students fail the shelf exams. The rates are much higher at UCLA, having increased tenfold in some subjects since 2020, according to internal data. It is absolutely insane. One professor said that the student in the operating room could not identify a major artery when asked, and this is what happens, then berated the professor for putting her on the spot. Another said that students at the end of their clinical rotations didn't know basic lab tests, and in some cases were unable to present patients. In other words, presenting patients is when a patient comes in, you get their medical history, you find out the problem that's going on, you have tests and numbers and results of those tests and so on and so forth, and that medical school student presents all this information, the required and necessary information, to a higher up, a doctor, saying, hey, we've ask the questions, we've done this, we diagnosed, this is what we found, this is what we suggest, here it is. The Barney basic things that doctors should do, and they can't even do that. The main thing that you're supposed to do, and because DEI has happened in this medical school, the majority of students can't do this. I don't know how some of these students are going to be junior doctors, said the professor. The faculty are seeing shocking decline in knowledge of medical students. And I think that's part of this. You could say, well, it's because of social media. It's because now we can just Google everything. We don't have to remember all of this stuff. We have computers, we have PDAs, we have phones. We could use these tools to diagnose and help us. So we don't need to know all this information. So that's kind of the reason of why we're seeing this decline in knowledge in current doctors today. But the problem is we're not seeing this in other medical schools. So that kind of blows that out of the water. For those who have seen the competency crisis up close, double standards and admissions are a big part of the problem. All the normal criteria of getting into medical school only apply to people of certain races, an admission officer said. For other people, those criteria are completely disregarded. What are the odds? Uh, ta, ta, ta. Led by Lucero, who also serves as the vice chair for equity, diversity, and inclusion of UCLA's anesthesiology department. And I imagine she probably gets an extra few bucks in her paycheck for doing that job as well. The admissions committee routinely gives back Black and Latino applicants a pass on subpar metrics for people who served on it, said, while whites and Asians need near perfect scores to be even considered. So again, here's an example of DEI in doing what it does, of lowering the standards for some groups of people, and then make it increasingly harder for others who have actually met the standard and have, high test scores and so on and so forth, and demonstrated over a period of time through learning and education and testing that they can meet that, and they're not even being considered unless they're near perfect. So again, what we're seeing is the sliding scale of standards, which is going to have a negative effect on the doctors that go out the door of this university, which is exactly what we're seeing. And it's all in the framework of we're keeping everybody equal. And we're going to raise these people up because they're disadvantaged or so on and so forth or whatever it is. And we're going to include them into being doctors. And we have a diverse workforce and so on and so forth because that's really important. And really, I just want the best qualified person to treat me as a doctor. I care less of what they do in their own time. I don't care their race. I don't care if they have an accent. I mean, heck, I'm retired here in Korea, and it doesn't bother me because I want the best qualified doctor to treat me. I don't want somebody, thank God this isn't here in Korea, and it's not a thing. So, yeah, people kind of ask me, why I retired overseas, and a lot of it had to do with expenses and finances and bills, and things are way too expensive in the United States, and property taxes and this and that. And things go up all around the world, but expenses are lower here in Korea than they were in the United States, and we're saving about half when it comes to utilities, expenses, and so on and so forth. But I think I'm going to have to add this to the list because, doctors here in medical schools don't play this game of, we're going to be DEI and we're going to be inclusive and we're going to make people equitable and we need to include all types of diversity in our hiring process instead of hiring for the best person for the job. Now, Korea and every other country on the planet has their own problems, but I still like the fact that they're focused on high standards of being a doctor and they're not messing around with this BS of DEI. And imagine that. Lucero did not respond to a request for comment. The bar for underrepresented minorities is as low as you could possibly imagine, said one committee member to the Free Beacon. It completely disregards grades and achievements. Those are kind of the things that you're looking for, is the good grades of retaining the information, the achievements that you made, that you can do your rotations, that you retain information, you can, present patients and diagnose and recommend treatments and so on and so forth. That's kind of dangerous if DEI has such an adverse effect of this. The problem they see is that it's just not the committee weighing academic merit against community service or considering how much time a given student had to study for the MCAT. For applicants, they say hardship and community service seem to be the only things that matter for the majority of committee's 20 to 30 members, many of who were handpicked by Lucero. What are the odds? It's kind of like the fox in the hen house inviting other foxes into the hen house, according to the people familiar with the selection process. We are always outnumbered, an admission officer said, who expressed concern about low grades. Other people would get upset when we brought up GPA. Lucero hasn't been kind to dissenters, speaking on condition of anonymity. 6 people who worked with her described a pattern of racially charged incidents that dispirited officials and pushed some of them to resign from the committee. This is what happens when DEI gets into an organization or gets into a company or a medical school. So no wonder MIT ended up saying, this shit don't work, we're getting rid of it. We want best quality people because we want to maintain our status of being a high level school. But apparently going from 6th to 18th, it doesn't, who cares? We don't want better doctors. We want a diverse workforce. She even lashed out at officials who questioned the qualifications of minority candidates, 5 sources said, suggesting naysayers are privileged, implying that they are racist, and subjecting them to diversity training sessions. So just because in the past it was like, hey, you have to have a certain grade point average to get into this medical school, when these people brought it up, all of a sudden this Lucero chick is like, oh, you're privileged, referring to white privilege, and that they're inherently racist, and you need to go to diversity training sessions, which can have an adverse effect because basically you're saying that you're not operating at a professional level, which could have an effect on promotions, or they would be a lack of promotions actually for these people. After a Native American applicant was rejected in 2021, for example, Lucero chewed out committee and made members sit through a 2-hour lecture on Native history delivered by her own sister. Wow. According to 3 people familiar with the incident, no applications were reviewed that day, an official present for the lecture said. In the anesthesiology department, where Lucero helps rank applicants to the department's residency program, she rebuffed calls to blind the race of candidates, telling colleagues in 2023 email that despite California's ban on racial preferences, we are not required to blind any information. So even, somebody comes up and said, hey, well, let's just keep it about qualifications. Let's keep it about test scores. Let's just blur out the names. So you can't tell the race of the person based on their name, like, Gonzalez or Johnson or Kim or Lee, or, you get the idea. So this person said, hey, let's just get rid of this and get the best applicants, kind of like what we used to do when we were, rated number 6 for medical research and so on and so forth in one of the top medical schools in the country. And she's like, yeah, we're not going to do that. Excuse me. That alone could get UCLA in legal trouble, according to this lead trial lawyer for plaintiffs as students for fair admissions versus Harvard, the Supreme Court case that outlawed affirmative action nationwide. Yeah, could be a big problem. Asking for information about an applicant's race when no lawful use can be made of it is presumptively illegal. You can't have evidence of overt discrimination like this and not have someone come forward as a plaintiff. So yeah, that's going to come up. So yeah, it's absolutely crazy on what we end up seeing is that there's been a dramatic shift in racial and ethnic composition of the medical school, where the number of Asian people who went to the medical school, I'm not smart, fell by almost a third between 2019 and 2022, according to public available data. No other elite medical school in California saw a similar decline. So again, what we're ended up seeing here is that half of UCLA medical students now fail the basic tests of medical competency because of this chick and DEI. It is absolutely insane. So, I don't know, maybe that's another reason to retire overseas, because now think of all the doctors that are going to come on the scene, and people complain about doctors already. This is going to have a ripple out effect depending on how many other medical schools take on this burden, this albatross of DEI, where it takes away from what these medical school students should actually be focusing on. And in this article, it also talked about how they spend time doing classes on DEI instead of doing classes on anatomy and this and that. It's taken away the time that they should be studying on, diagnosing skills and identifying and this and that and treatments and how to present and so on and so forth. The main things that doctors do, they're getting less time to do that. They're getting less time to study for that. And again, they're focusing on DEI, which doesn't help you diagnose problems. So again, we're having a negative effect in this medical school, and it's just absolutely insane. I mean, the picture there is nice. We got the picture, we got the white, we got the, the Hispanic, the Indian, the Asian, the black guy. It's all, culturally relevant. relevant. But yeah, unfortunately, what ends up this is already biting him in the ass. And just based off of research alone, when you go from 6th to 18th, that tells you that your pool of medical school students who are doing research are lower on the totem pole than what you initially had, and it's because the standards are being diluted because of DEI. So anyway, yeah, I just wanted to talk about this, and yes, I do support the Second Amendment. So anyway, yeah, this is just absolutely crazy on what we end up seeing and how these people are not passing their shelf exams. Again, usually only 5%, but they're showing that 50% of these medical school students are not able to pass their shelf exams. That is a huge, huge problem. And that is going to ripple out into the care that you, maybe not you because you don't live in California, but if people who have become doctors from UCLA Medical School go to some other state, it could be you. They could be your doctor or your family's doctor or somebody that you know, a significant other, friends and family, could get lower quality care. And if this is allowed to continue, as we've seen with other failed liberal policies that take away from a high quality end product that goes out the door, you're going to pay for it. And unfortunately, it could be lack of treatment, bad quality treatment. I imagine now with this, when you start thinking about all of this and the final result and the negative aspects, you're going to have more medical malpractice suits and lawsuits. So this is going to, that's going to hurt right there, to whatever hospital or medical clinic that these people work at, and they make bad decisions because they know all about natural, Native American history and black this and that and Hispanics and diversity and equity and inclusion instead of knowing how to be a good doctor. Yeah, it's that. Yeah, I just, you can see, I know there are lawyers out there that do medical malpractice that are looking at this and it's like, oh yeah, daddy's getting a new boat. Daddy's buying another house in Key Largo. Yes. That's what they're doing. So it's absolutely insane. And yeah, it's now think about it. It talks about the whistleblowers. These people that are coming forward and saying this, and adverse actions have been taken against them. They have to go through diversity training. Some of them have been forced out of committee. I would even go so far, if it's gone that far, that some people have been fired because of this, and that is going to result in lawsuits as well. Yeah, how this is ever allowed to happen is absolutely insane, but when you don't focus on the prize, you will focus and attain the thing that you're looking at. And unfortunately, if it's not being a good qualified doctor, you'll attain those things that you're looking for, but you're not going to be a good qualified doctor. You're going to lower the bar and you're going to lower the quality of the product, person, or process that is going out the door. It almost ruins my latte, but my latte is so good. The latte wipes away the bad taste of what this medical school is doing and the craziness that is going on. So anyway, that's my rant for today. I know that's a little bit different, but when you get to this point of where it's going to impact people's lives and the treatment that they get as doctors or the safety when people are traveling from point A to point B, and there's a negative impact because of this DEI in that. Yeah, some people need to speak out on this, and it's hitting all aspects of our society, not just doctors and not just schools, but businesses as well, and that can affect promotions of where normally you're getting a high quality product, but now that's not the focus because they want this DEI stuff, and some people have probably gotten fired over this. Again, I just see nothing but lawsuits and lawyers getting rich over this. And the American people are going to be the ones that are bent over. And unfortunately, you and I are the public. And yeah, we're the ones that pay the price for this stupidity. At least that's my 2 cents as of now. All righty. With that said, if you got any comments, questions, suggestions, your point of view, put them in the comment section down below. I would like to read those. But this is just insanity. The movie Idiocracy, in case you haven't seen it, was a comedy about how dumb people get over time, and I think we're actually making this a documentary. If you haven't seen Idiocracy, it is a great example of where we're heading in the United States. And for some people, that might be just enough to retire overseas and get away from all this craziness. Alrighty. Hopefully we'll see you on the next video. Take care. Peace. Crazy. Stupid.